In what ways do today's industries and economic practices shape, affect, or dictate Western social mores regarding mortality? A question like this is not only one of great magnitude, but is also one of great complexity. To properly answer this inquiry, it must be broken down into two separate components. The first component explores how today's industries and economic practices influence people in the world. The second component reveals how this particular influence affects Western social mores regarding mortality. In this lecture, I will attempt to show how modern industrial and economic practices distort our perception of mortality. Let's begin with the first component. John Locke, in his second treatise of government, says, "God, who has given the world to men in common, has also given them reason to make use of it to the best advantage of life and convenience. The earth and everything in it is given to men for the support and comfort of their existence." Now, if you are sitting here today and you own a Snuggie, a Magic Bullet, a George Foreman grill, or a ShamWow, then you have witnessed firsthand man making good use of his reason to make life more convenient and to have a more comfortable existence. Locke remarks on man's disposition to work and flourish. He advocates for convenience and pleasurable existence. Making life more comfortable and secure through commodity and material is an inherent part of our culture. It has become the overarching tone of the world. If asked what characterizes countries in the West, words like prosperity, wealth, and money immediately come to mind. And if we were to put a monolithic notion specifically to American culture, it would be typified as having an enterprising and entrepreneurial spirit, having an investing mentality, making money, and being able to make a market out of anything. Economy and industry dominate the world today, and with the exception of a few Asian countries, the West leads other nations through industry and economic practice. Since the late 19th and 20th century, the West has created an intense and heavy ambience of avarice for ourselves, and our awareness for affluence has skyrocketed. The resultant cost of this is a growing prominence of materialism within our society. Industry has cultivated materialism. Just look at the methodology of industry. The first industrial revolution mechanized the textile, agricultural, and transportation industries. In the second industrial revolution, Henry Ford mastered the assembly line, leading the way to mass production. And now we have a third industrial revolution where manufacturing is becoming digital. Each industrial revolution escalates material production, creating a higher standard of living than the one before it. An increase in standard implies a new caliber of good living and flourishing. The innovation in each industrial revolution inspires people to be innovative and inventive. Since industry is upgrading, we feel compelled to keep up, and we do this by redefining stature to fit an industrial context. Industrial provision encourages us to indulge in products through persuasive marketing. The endorsements of products in advertisement aim to fulfill physical ones by targeting emotions. Industry doesn't want us to simply buy their products, they want us to experience their products in a way that compels dependency. Fully aware of this, the market takes advantage of our longing for spiritual fulfillment. Industry capitalizes on our spiritual shortcomings by creating dependency on material goods. Industry blurs the distinctions between physical and spiritual needs. This material absorption creates a physical and spiritual imbalance. We become susceptible to thinking that through obtainment of physical goods, we can satisfy our spiritual longings. Now consider the economic ideology of consumerism. Consumerism emphasizes consumption, which in itself is not a bad thing. Consuming goods and services is good economically. Through consumption, we are stimulating the economy. But relying on this economic positivity misrepresents consumerist tendencies. The drive in consumerism is to obtain materialistic goods, the belief that the more material acquired, the better one's life is. This implies an increased value placed on material possessions. The conjoining of these two isms is hazardous. It causes us to concentrate on bettering our lives through material goods, thereby reducing our attention to just an earthly life and nothing beyond it. Economic practices and industries do not provide us with sustainable moral leadership, nor do they fulfill our soulish desires. Instead, they give us temporary answers, offering band-aid solutions to the reality of death. Young British pop star Lily Allen characterizes this in her popular song, "I Don't Know," when she sings, "I want to be rich and I want lots of money. I want loads of clothes and loads of diamonds. Life's about film stars and less about mothers. It's all about fast cars and passing each other. And I'm a weapon of mass consumption, and it's not my fault, it's how I'm programmed to function." Allen's lyrics demonstrate how we are distancing ourselves from permanency and concentrating on brevity. We center our attention towards fading things instead of focusing on what's eternal. Because of modern industries and economic practice, we have let ourselves find security in material gain. Industry has established a new precedent of good living. Consumerism influences us to put higher value on material goods, and materialism, as a result of industry and economic practice, creates a physical and spiritual variation, causing an increased dependency on commodity. Moving on to the second component, let's see how this particular influence affects Western social mores regarding mortality. A modern industrial and economic influence affects social mores regarding mortality in three central ways. The first way is how one's death reflects a life that is valued in monetary terms. The insurance industry nets roughly around $1 trillion. 54% of that is life insurance. That is an overwhelming percentage. People spend thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year so that their family can get a lump sum. Your life worth is supposed to be condensed into a hefty check. We evaluate prosperity in life through monetary terms. The sum of money Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, Marilyn Monroe, Charles Schultz, and John Lennon made after their deaths accumulates to $280 million. Yes, they had fame, money, and fortune, but we are perceptive enough to realize that wealth or material didn't make their lives perfect or alleviate hardship. We don't talk about what causes successful people to die. No one converses about what led Michael Jackson to overdose, why Marilyn Monroe committed suicide, or what made Elvis Presley a drug addict. Instead, we divert our attention from their death and focus on celebrating their lives. We fabricate the truth of people's lives with materialistic legacy and wealth, rather than reveal their true character. When did living honorably stop being enough? When did humility and a life of compassion stop being sufficient as living a good life? This economic and industrial influence preoccupies us to chase after material and money. Because industry has told us what a good life is, we're too busy trying to make our life valuable through money and material, rather than attempt to live virtuously or to find out what makes life worthwhile. Simply put, we monetize life and we monetize death because in the words of Jay-Z, money talks, so speak up. The second way economic and industrial influence affects social mores regarding mortality is by portraying death as an inconvenience. Thomas Hobbes in his Leviathan says, "The passions that incline men to peace are fear of death. Desire of such things are necessary to commodious living, and that through material we can hush, and that a hope by their industry to obtain them." Hobbes is encouraging commodious living, and that through material we can hush our fear of mortality. We try to calm our fear of death through convenience and comfortable living. In trying to ignore the fear of death, we sideline our spiritual nature in the process. By the time one realizes that material and wealth are inadequate remedies on matters of the heart, that person has already minimized their own spiritual nature by trying to acquire wealth. Because material makes life comfortable, death is inconvenient because it puts a stop to a convenient existence. The third way is that by distancing ourselves from mortality, we halt the conversation of what mortality is supposed to mean. We are so centered on celebrating life and living life to the fullest that we ignore contemplating the nature of death. Many philosophers and even modern intellectuals have tried to answer questions like, what is the purpose of life? Or what makes a good life? But there's not too much talk about what death is supposed to signify or represent. Our perception of mortality is distorted because we fail to recognize death as significant and meaningful. Instead, we cast it off aside as inconvenience. And as Christians, have we not fallen under the same spell? As children of God, we need to distance ourselves from the idea that industry and economic practice can render death meaningless. After all, wasn't the purpose of Christ's life fulfilled in his death? Let us turn our gaze to the cross and follow Christ's example of love. And let us find rest in knowing that our deaths reflect a purpose devoted to God, so that when mortality comes, we can finally be reunited with the one who is love, wake up in glory, breathe new celestial air, and find it to be home.